Hey everybody, it's Energy Drop, and today I've got another video talking about point buy. This one is going over point buy modifiers. And by modifiers, I mean ways you can change the rules of point buy to cater to an experience that you are going to enjoy more. All of the stuff that I'm talking about in this video is referencing the original point buy video I made. If you haven't watched that, please go back and watch it. You're going to have no idea what's going on if you don't. But if you commented on the previous video, thank you so much. All of the stuff that people commented on the previous video, that's what the content of this video is going to be. So it's ways to make point buy a little bit more fun or more balanced, and things that people liked or didn't like. All that stuff is going to be talked about in this video, with the first one being bans. People did not care for bans in my suggested Radiant Dawn point buy list, but I think that they're kind of necessary in order for the game and point buy to function. But if you don't like bans, that is totally fine. A lot of people said that they did not. I would suggest eliminating bans. I said in the original video, if you want to take ban characters away and make them deployable, just assign a high deployment cost. Now, you might think that 4 points is fair. You might think that 5 points is fair. That's up to you. Right? I would say for anyone who's actually going to try point buy, don't just take a list and run with it. I would look it over, give it a serious once over, say, I think that this character is fairly put into this category. They should cost this many points. And that includes banned characters as well. This mod, you could totally just take right out of the box, just eliminate the word banned, throw 4 points on there and let it run. That may not be the best experience, but that's probably the easiest way to just give it a try. This mod will make the game easier because having more options is better than less. And all these characters that you're bringing into the pool are extremely strong. But how much easier that it becomes is dependent on the level where you set these characters at, whether you put them at 4 points, 5 points, whatever. But it's all about what experience that you want to make when you're playing point buy. So if you want to be able to use any of these characters on any given map, throw a low point value at them and just try that out. I personally won't be making point buy lists in the future without bans being taken into account. I think that you kind of need them in order for point buy to work, because if you can throw Seth out on a map in Sacred Stones, for instance, you're probably going to do it no matter how much he costs. That's just my personal opinion. Disclaimer, that might be wrong. So do what you think is fun. I liked it. This was probably the most commented thing on the previous video, and I think that it's a great idea. Just if you don't want bans, just assign a point cost you think is fair to these units. Some of them may be worth 4 in your mind. Some of them may be worth 5. You can split these up into different levels. Do whatever you think is best. This was probably the other most commented suggestion, and this one I think is really great as well, which is changing the force deployed unit cost. So in the example on the right, this is one I had in the previous video, where it's showcasing some quote-unquote expensive units to deploy. You have Gatry, you have Soren, you have Oscar. They all cost 2. And with Ike and Randolph costing 3, you've already used all 12 points right here. But what if your force-deployed units costed, say, just 1 point? Every time they're thrown out onto the map and you have to use them, they cost 1 point, no matter who they are. Well, in this example, you would only be using 8 points so far. So you'd have 4 more points to work with. You could throw out Boyd and Mia on this map as well, and that would be totally fine. If you're going to say force deployed units have a static value, like a static cost, I would recommend using at least 1 point. I wouldn't say 0 points, for instance. That's just my personal opinion. Radiant Dawn, for example, has a lot of force deployed maps. Sometimes you'll be forced to use 10 units, and some of them are really, really strong. So I would say, a force deployed unit costing at least 1 is the minimum that I would personally go. I really like this mod, and I think that you could make the case that it should be in the default point buy rules. In my original implementation of point buy, this was actually one of the only 2 rules, was that force deployed units costed 1, and that your deploy limit is equal to how many units that you could normally put on a map. I went back and changed this and just threw units into point categories and just ran with it. And if they were force deployed, then so be it. But I think that you're totally fine, setting force deploys to be like 1 point, 1.5 points, whatever they are. Some suggestions that I have for this rule is if you have a force deployed unit like Ranulph, you could say that he only costs half of what he normally would because you're forced to use him on this map. So instead of 3 points, he's a 1.5 point cost on Part 3, Chapter 4, for instance. Another thing that you could do is evaluate the Lord units, which are like, the leaders of your armies. Think like Lynn or Ike or Erica in other Fire Emblem games. Those Lord units should be evaluated outside of their usefulness. So because Ike is going to be on every single map in Fire Emblem 9, for instance, and every one that you see him on Fire Emblem 10 as well, he could cost, say, 2 points, even though he's better than literally every single 2-point unit, just from a statistics and availability and all that sort of stuff. He has Ragnell. You could still say that he only costs 2, so it frees up a little bit more for you to use on any given map, right? It's going to make the game a little bit easier. Again, totally great. I think that doing something like this in combination with running on like hard mode, for instance, could make the game a lot more enjoyable for people. And also it's something that you could do like on a per map basis or something you add mid playthrough if you're really struggling, things like that. So another great mod that people suggested. This one is my favorite. This is one that I think probably should be in the default point buy rules. It's just a little bit wordy, so I don't know how to quite get it across in a perfect, concise form. But that's introducing anti-snowball. This is actually the only mod suggestion that I got that would make the game harder, which I like. The anti-snowball suggestion that I got was increasing a unit's deploy cost upon promotion to mitigate juggernauting. And that's just using like, say, 3 units on a map and just steamrolling it because they're so high level and you fed all the experience to them. Because in point buy, you're probably low manning maps a lot. You're using less units than you're intended to clear a map, which will make it harder, but those units will be a much higher level because experience is being spread around a lot less. So in order to, incentivize you not to, chase tier 3 classes really early on and just like make units that are so crazy strong for where they are in the game, is increasing the deployment cost of units based on how many times they promoted. So Nolan, for example, he comes in as a fighter and he costs 2 points in default point buy, but on the list that I just happened to make. Now, if he goes to his second tier class, which I think is Warrior, he would cost 2.5 using this mod. And at Reaver, his tier 3 class, he would cost 3 points to deploy. I think that you may have to adjust your point buy list accordingly. If you wanted to use this mod, you'd have to do a little bit more work on the front end, but I think that that's totally fine. Maybe you make some tier 1 units cheaper and make some tier 3 units more expensive, like just try to balance it out, things like that. And Lagoos, who are, unique to Fire Emblem 9 and 10. In Radiant Dawn, they have strike ranks, so maybe you could add a point value, like half a point, based on how many times their strike rank goes up, something like that, considering they don't promote. So this is another great mod suggestion that I got. Really like this one as well. The other stuff that I got, these are also great suggestions, but I don't know if they work as like a modifier for the whole game as much as they could like on a per map basis, which you could definitely make the case that these could be used in combination with like higher difficulties and stuff and still totally work across the whole game. First one is adjusted deployment limits. Say if you have 12 units that you can deploy on a regular map, that's your point buy budget is 12 points. If you just adjusted that to be like 1.5 times or 2 times the total limit, so it'd be like 18 points or 24 points or something like that, it could make playing the harder modes a little bit easier. So if you're playing on hard mode and you're doing point buy and your deployment limit is 1.5 times the deployment total, then that could ease the difficulty curve a little bit and lets you use a little bit more units or like more expensive units and make it a little bit more enjoyable for you. Great suggestion that I got. Another one is, I like this one quite a bit, and I may actually use this one for the point buy run I'm doing for Radiant Dawn right now, is that banned characters have a one-time usage policy. So Nyla, for instance, you could not use her outside of the maps that she's force deployed on. And in part 5, you are choosing who goes with you into the tower, and you just already have your main army, right? You have units that you're going to use pretty much the whole time. And on the last map, like, you have some characters that died, or like you really need a little bit extra juice right there at the end. You could throw Nyla in for the one time that you get to use her in the game, or a lot of the Beast Lords if you've managed to avoid using them throughout your time playing, and cash in on them right at the end. In part 4, you've got the Beast Kings, how they're put into different maps at force deploys as well. The existing point buy rules would have you like sit them in a corner and avoid doing combat with them. But if you're really having trouble with anything in part 4, you could say use Skrimir on a map and, steamroll that one in hopes that the next one's going to be a little bit easier. So those were the suggestions that I got that I managed to pull out from the comments of the previous video. If you commented and your suggestion isn't in this video, it may have been a little bit after I looked through, or I just missed it, and I'm sorry for that. But thanks to everyone who commented on the previous video, giving suggestions on way to further enhance the point buy experience. The whole point of creating point buy in the first place is to make a way that's exciting for people to play through Fire Emblem games again. I hope that these rules can kind of further enhance the point buy system for you, as I know it will for me. So thanks so much for watching up to this point. I'll see you in the next one.